Welcome to the Skill Touch Disrupt podcast, where we dive into the world of innovation and technology. My name is Malika, and I'm the CEO and founder of Skill Torch, which is a recruitment company that specializes in the artificial intelligence space across the globe. Today, I have with me Ben Brown, who is the VP of Marketing of Akasa. He's joining us on the podcast today to talk to us a bit more about AI impact on the job market and the use of automation. Ben, great to have you on here.
Malika, thanks for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it would be great if you can tell our audience a bit more about yourself, your background, and your journey into Akasa as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it might be helpful just to share a bit about Akasa first.
Yeah.
Akasa is a provider of generative AI tools for revenue cycle management. Revenue cycle management, for those who don't know, is a rather cut and dry but necessary element to the healthcare world. It's the
Hmm.
process of hospitals and health systems submitting paperwork, so to speak, to insurance companies in order to get
Yeah.
reimbursed for the work that they do. Highly manual process that is certainly benefiting a lot from AI. Um,
Hmm.
so as you know, then I serve as vice president of marketing at Akasa. I'm approaching my 6 month mark. It's a remarkable group to be a part of. Prior to Akasa, I led marketing at customer experience at Converse Now, which is another AI company focused on the enterprise restaurant world. Most of
Right.
my career actually has been in hospitality technology. Prior to Converse Now, I was founder and CEO of a restaurant technology platform called TastePro.
Hmm.
I've led marketing at a few, tech startups prior to that. I got my start into the corporate world, working in content strategy with Princess Cruises, working in strategy with MGM Resorts International. And believe it or not, early on in my career, I was actually a teacher with the Teach for America program,
Oh,
which
no
is
way.
quite prevalent in the States. I'm a double Trojan. Fight on, got my MBA and BA from USC.
Oh, good for you. Well
And
done.
yeah, I'm calling in from San Diego.
Amazing. Cool. So anyway, obviously we had a conversation briefly last week with regards to the impact of AI and how it is in the job market. Obviously, I told you a bit more about, my opinion around this and how it is. And I think I made it very clear that um I think that the recruitment is here to stay. I do not think that artificial intelligence is necessarily going to replace us, but I think it will certainly enhance our jobs. But in your opinion, how do you feel like AI is currently impacting the job market, so particularly in industries where sort of automation is being introduced?
I think that the quote that you just shared really sums it up for a
Yeah.
lot of verticals. I don't think AI is going to replace us, but I think it's going to allow us to enhance our jobs. That really is the name of the game, as far as the overwhelming majority of AI influence into most any role is concerned, to be honest.
Hmm.
I've worked with now a number of AI groups, and I've seen the same pattern across the board. Really recognizing, by the way, like AI is still in its infancy, at
Yeah.
least in the current stage. When you think about it, AI has actually been around for quite a long time, but AI as we know it in this post-Chat GPT generative AI world, like the technology is quite early on in its life cycle. There are certainly a lot of changes and progressions, evolution that will take place. But as we're seeing it, the goal is right now pretty centered around augmentation over automation. And what
Right.
I mean by that is that AI does a really good job of automating the really cut and dry, mundane, repetitive, time consuming tasks that most people really don't want to do. And at this stage,
Hmm.
with the technology there, that most people don't have any business doing. So
Right.
the, um, oh, can I track my order question, or just the really routine stuff that a machine can do. That it's really black and white. There's no need for like skilled human intervention. Like that's where
Hmm.
AI flourishes. The basic recall stuff. In the same way that look, you don't necessarily need to memorize like 456 times 3,292. Like a calculator can do that for you. Now
Exactly.
AI has the ability to sort of expand on that methodology, right? So that that stuff that, I don't know what it is in the recruiting world that is that like, oh, I really want to save myself an hour or two every day by not having to do this. Like, yeah, that's the kind of stuff that AI can do. And, with us in the marketing world, yeah, AI can do a good job of like drafting an email that we will then have to very heavily edit to put in our brand voice and convey the talking points we want to convey. But it allows us to get from 0 to 1 in a much quicker way and not necessarily work with a blank canvas. So in the healthcare space now, um, where Akasa flourishes is enabling generative AI to reduce incredibly time consuming tasks, like, for example, prior authorization or medical coding, where in some cases a team member might have to go through hundreds of pages of medical documents to try and find the critical nuggets of information needed in order to submit the auth or the encounter, what have you.
Hmm.
That process can take 10 minutes, it can take 30 minutes, it can take hours, depending on the complexity of the case. Well, in the same way that ChatGPT comes through the internet to give a user whatever it prompts it for, Akasa's technology will comb through, a health system's data to extract that information, so a person doesn't have to
Right.
read through it manually. Um, it it solves a lot of problems. I can get into that in a moment, but I'm going to stop there because I feel like I've gone
Oh
a bit
no,
over
carry
in
on. It's
terms of what
interesting.
you were looking for.
No, to be honest, it's always fascinating to know about the healthcare industry, particularly in the US, because as everyone's obviously got insurance. They're submitting loads of claims. There's loads of paperwork to get through. It's very slow. So yeah, I am. It is very interesting in terms of what Acast is trying to achieve, and I do feel like what they are trying to achieve is pretty mandatory for today's world in terms of trust, trying to speed it, trying to automate it, trying to prevent errors from occurring as well.
Mhm. No, you're absolutely right. It's it really comes down to how can AI help companies make money, save money, and grow.
Yeah,
And where a lot of people's minds are going is that okay, AI can replace jobs. And I would argue that there are very few jobs that AI can adequately replace, at least for the time being. That
yeah,
every job, when you think about it, or nearly every job, just has an element of mundane, repetitive work that people don't want to do. So, okay, how
exactly.
do you delegate that to a virtual assistant so that you can spend more of your time doing the work that a person is intended to do, involving critical thinking, problem solving, direct
Mhm.
interaction with other people. Um, it's stuff that truthfully we don't have enough time for now because of all the repetitive stuff that we have to do. So
Yeah,
it's not like it's not like you would have to hire a new person to do the stuff that we want to do. It just allows us to have more meaningful interactions and better utilize our time in order to move forward quicker.
exactly. No, I totally agree with you. And then, in terms of the augmentation of automation, how does that approach differ from traditional views of automation and sort of job displacement, would you say?
Yeah, so augmentation is essentially the ability to add a layer of superpowers, so to speak, onto a person's ability to perform their job.
Hmm.
So, and that, like, in the robotics world, for
Yeah.
example, this is not applicable to AI, or rather to the AI that Akasa is doing, but it's the most, I guess, illustrative visual that I can deliver. You have a car mechanic that holds a power drill for hours at a time. That drill can get very heavy after a while.
Hmm.
Imagine a device that essentially goes over this person's arm so that it literally gives their arm super strength so that this person can hold that drill without breaking a sweat for their entire shift. That is augmentation. The person is still there. They are still operating the drill, but they have this device that allows them to operate the drill with much greater ease, as opposed to automation, which is just a robot that drills into the same spot every single time. Using that same example, this this mechanic, they really need to make a game time decision. They're working on a
Mhm.
bunch of different cars. There is no formula that says to the millimeter where they need to drill and when throughout their shift. You need a person to think critically and really
Yeah.
assess the situation for how to best use that drill. So in this case, it really is critical to have a person in place because at this point in time, you cannot train the machine to make those same game time decisions as the
Right.
person. So what augmentation does is it gives you the best of both worlds. It gives you a technology enhanced version of an individual that, of course, is still working the job that they intend to work, but they're able to perform much better and deliver much better results and
Mhm.
truthfully enjoy a lot more job satisfaction. In the case of this mechanic, their arm is not bugging them at the end of every day. They're probably not going to have these medical issues that are going to result from years and years of doing this day in and day out. Moving now into the example within the healthcare world, take a medical coder. These are people that sit behind a desk. They look at a dual screen for hours at a time, and they look at encounter after encounter. So a patient who gets bypass surgery, as an extreme example, and they have to go through just pages and pages and pages of doctor's notes, of labs,
Mhm.
of all sorts of different types of interactions that follow very different structures. And until now, those people have had to just comb through this information manually. It takes forever. Your eyes glaze over, after doing this for too long. Maybe you even miss something. And this process takes so long and it's so mundane that you just have this backlog of work that's piling up that you can't get to because it takes you so long to get through each thing. Well, now you have AI that does like all that research for you in the snap of
Mhm.
a finger. So what you as the coder are able to do is then take that information. The AI essentially recommends codes for you to type in, and you can assess whether or not those recommendations are sound. And so a human coder, right, is making that call. They're using their training, their knowledge of the encounter to assess whether the AI's recommendations are good or not. They can accept
Yeah.
them, they can reject them. Akasa medical coding actually has a feature where every code recommendation has justifications that are linked to medical text so that there's full transparency into where these recommendations are coming from and why.
Oh, cool.
So it's the same like thing as the mechanic having the drill. This coder makes the game time decision,
Yeah.
and they're just doing it heavily aided with the use of technology. Um, that would be augmentation in the healthcare example. Automation, it does exist. It's actually existed for quite some time. It's called RPA, or robotic process automation. So in this case, there's no coder involved. Like AI works completely behind the scenes. It generates its recommendations and like that's it. No person involved. Well, things break all the time. Code recommendations could be wrong. There are other hybrids where with an RPA system, a coder will simply look at all of the recommendations, and sometimes they're so ineffective that the coder deletes them off the bat and just starts from scratch, because there's no justifications, there's no transparency. So in this case, it really is that best of both worlds example where you have technology, it's doing the heavy lifting at the beginning, it empowers people to do a lot more and be a lot more productive with their time.
Amazing. Cool. That's what I was going to ask you in terms of your next question, but you've already answered it for me. You kind of dabbled on to, the examples of the tasks and processes and kind of like, how AI is really just kind of like making our work a lot easier. But how would you say it's sort of changing the fundamental nature of work? Can you sort of go into a bit more detail around that?
So I think that AI is completely flipping the script for a lot of operations. In the case
Mm,
of revenue cycle management, where Akasa lives, Um, AI is transforming coders and analysts from researchers into validators. So instead of spending most of your time like doing the legwork, you're actually supervising AI and you're making sure that the AI is actually doing the right thing
Yeah.
for you. So it's taking these staff members who were previously doing like this highly manual work, and now they are in turn supervisors in their own rights, simply supervising whether the technology is working for them. And I think that's going to be the case with a lot of roles, both of course
Mm,
in and outside of the healthcare world, where people will be operating much more toward the top of their skill set, rather than just focusing on this lower level stuff. You think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, sort of transforming that into like the hierarchy of your job description. People are going to be doing a lot more of the fulfilling work that requires them to like flex their minds
yeah.
and really empower them with abilities to make decisions, employ critical thinking, collaborate with others, etc. So uh, maybe I'm just pontificating, but in the recruiting world, right? Maybe instead of spending so much of your time like combing through LinkedIn for the perfect candidate, maybe AI can help you find a better match, and that you can spend more of your time developing relationships with those people and really, just being able to get from one to two in a much quicker way because you've already gotten from zero to one.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I still have to do the manual work on LinkedIn. I would say some of the AI tools that are out there for recruitment is actually not so accurate. The thing that the AI stuff really works well in recruitment is particularly on the outreaching to candidates and clients.
Mm.
So a few years ago, you would have to just send like one email. And this is probably similar to your marketing role, right? You send one email to someone, you probably have to send that same bespoke one when actually you can automate a lot of that stuff now, and you can basically, you probably get this in your inbox already where someone's following up with you 3 or 4 times. That's the automation AI tool that's right there, and that's a lot of the stuff that many of our recruiters today are using. But when it comes to actually searching candidates, there are some tools out there where it'll pick out keywords, but I still feel like I need like a fresh pair of eyes to actually have a look at that and see how accurate it is. And again, biggest thing is building the relationships. You cannot build relationships in recruitment with a robot. You have to do that in person.
Yeah, and I think that you're touching on a really good topic in terms of all right, what are the limitations of AI? And
Yeah.
really, anything that involves person-to-person interaction, anything that involves like congeniality, warmth, personability, um, you can't replicate that.
No.
And especially in the marketing world, like I'm very wary of the limitations of AI in terms of, establishing relationships with people. AI can help you streamline the process, but when it comes to actually building the relationship, like that is something that is meant for people to do. So
Mm,
really being able to understand and utilize that balance as it's meant to be, I think is quite important.
definitely, absolutely. And then what strategies do you generally use to sort of educate partners and clients around the benefits and the direct impact of AI tools in your work?
Yeah, it's a great question. KPI alignment is really important. So AI changes the process of things. At the end of the day, the most important outcomes should be relatively unchanged in terms of how they are measured. So it's about
Mm,
talking to the customer and saying, okay, like how do you, in terms of medical coding, for example, how do you measure success in medical coding? Okay, let's talk about the number of denials that we get. Let's talk about, just the accuracy of the codes that are submitted, the time that it takes a coder to submit the code. These are all these are all metrics that were there before AI ever entered the scene. So it's about, okay, how can this technology enhance the goals that you are currently holding yourselves accountable for? So I think that that's the most critical element to instill, is making sure that you are aligned with how your customer or user is measuring success. and that you are enabling your AI to work in a way where it's very easy for you as the AI provider to convey the value that you are presenting. Um, on top of that, it is about understanding the internal metrics of AI. So what signifies strong AI performance? And for us, that could be, just percentage of codes accepted by the coder. That's saying that, all right, the coding recommendations that Akasa medical coding is generating are in fact, very accurate and reliable, and that the people who are using the tool are accepting them a lot more often than they were with other platforms. So
Mm.
that's what I would say to that.
And how are you sort of like, and so far, how are you sort of measuring that success? Like, how is that doing so far?
It's doing very well. We recently spoke at a large conference in Las Vegas alongside a large healthcare provider, and they were talking about the prior authorization process.
Right.
Prior authorization is essentially the process of getting pre-approval from an insurance company to say, hey, we want to do this procedure, but can you just like tell us in advance that we can do it? And if the insurance provider says yes, then all right, let's schedule the surgery, etc. So you have this metric called days out. In other words, how
Mm.
many days before the procedure will this process be approved? And 14 days out is like a really good mark to have because it allows you to schedule an appointment with the patient and the physician, and it makes sure that you've got all your ducks in a row so that you're not doing things at the last minute. So, like the number of procedures or the number of prior auths that received approval 14 days in advance or more was in like the 40s with this
Wow.
major health system. That leaves a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
Um, it's now in the 90s, and that is an astronomical jump. That
Yeah.
means that as a patient, it means that you're not getting delayed in a critical procedure that's going to improve your quality of life. And in turn, you're not going to have a procedure canceled on you a couple days in advance because it couldn't get the prior authorization. It's really having a direct impact on the patient experience, of course, in addition to staff productivity and the health system's, financial sustainability. So it's really creating a major win-win-win.
Amazing. And in terms of the future, then, I like to ask all my guests this. So, what do you see the future in terms of AI, especially around automation and the augmented stuff that you mentioned?
I think that the pattern that we're seeing is going to continue to progress and evolve, and I think that more roles are going to benefit from augmentation over the next couple of years. As a marketer, I'm very interested to see how generative AI is able to roll out with on-brand content, so that the stuff that
Mm.
AI drafts will actually sound like the stuff that me and my team would create.
Yeah.
Um, I think that I think that people are going to be a lot more productive and able to think a lot more creatively and strategically about the ways that they perform their job. I think performance is going to go up. I think that entirely new roles are going to be created within organizations, and that most roles across organizations are going to shift fundamentally. Everything from people at the more junior levels are going to be supervisors of AI more than they will be granular level task performers. And that
Hmm.
those in managerial positions are going to really have to understand how can you better incorporate AI into your team in order to increase productivity and results. So I think those are going to be some of the biggest changes that we see forthcoming.
Cool. Are we seeing some of those already, or not? Have you seen some of those,
Well, we
or
are
not yet?
absolutely seeing them. I think that, case in point in the revenue cycle world, w- you know, Akasa is pretty proud to be like the provider of the solutions that are moving this category forward, and that it's only going to improve as technology improves.
Nice. All right. And then, how might those sort of changes continue to transform the job market and work efficiency? Would you say?
Well, they're going to transform the job market fundamentally because the required skills for these jobs are going to require someone to at least be amenable to working with AI. You don't have to be a software engineer. Once AI is like set within your existing system, you don't really need any kind of advanced technological understanding to use it. It's like using Grammarly on the computer. It just gives you some suggestions and you can accept them or not. So just, having people that have that open mindset, it's pretty important. And then just for people to, be aware of what's out there and how generative AI can enhance their teams and their own skills. And as far as efficiency goes, yes, it's going to create a lot of efficiency. What we
Mm,
will also see, I am expecting, is that the expectations and the bar is in turn going to rise. So because you now have access to this tool, instead of being, you know, productive at, a level 7, we now expect you to be productive at a level 8 or a level 9 because you now have the tools that you need in order to make it happen. In the same way that, okay, we would, we hundreds of years ago, the expectation is that it would take you weeks or months to get from New York to London. But now the expectation is that you can get there in like 4 to 6 hours on a plane.
mm.
So, it's that same methodology that we're taking into workforce productivity today.
I like that thinking. Yeah, that's pretty true, actually. Well, it was great to have you on here, Ben. I really enjoyed our conversation, and it's always good to sort of get your insights, especially around like AI impact on the job market, outside of recruitment as well. So, yeah, I really appreciate your time.
Likewise, my pleasure, Malika.
All right.